I'm not sure how that happened. Other than
Hey everybody, it's roasting a chubby time. We got a chubby in the house.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, might as well set the tone right away. Yeah. So,
Nope.
well, got to fill in a little bit of Joe. I think Paul will be here a little bit later, and I think Ken's showing up too. I don't know. He said he was going to show up, so. But yeah, you know what? I didn't get anything from Vance either. So maybe they saw that we're roasting a chubby and they fled. I don't know. Maybe
I had the wrong
didn't like the sound of that. Well, then maybe they thought they were the chubby. I don't know. But there's only one chubby in there.
I have niche protection.
You do have niche protection. So yeah, well, we usually start off the show by sharing anything cool for the week. So, Greg, anything cool for the week that you did, watched, or bought, or got?
I only
doing
made
100
things
interviews
this week. I made wrote a bunch of stuff, finalized the first kind of the core character design, all of the really hard things to do for a game. And then what's left now is mostly done in the rule system because I had to build that alongside the characters' stuff. And then
Makes sense.
things like encounters and monsters and stuff that you have to make, but you always make it downwind of everything else, So like,
right,
it's going to interact and feed back into the system that you've made. So the big project for me that I'm going to be kickstarting after North Texas is on its way. It's good. I did the cover. I used the image that I had gotten through Getty Images a while ago for something else, and it never got used. And it's this gorgeous image. I'm like, oh man, I gotta finally get this.
I
thing
gotta
in
use
print.
this.
So it's a really awesome cover and design, but I'm just not ready to throw it open yet until I get a little bit further down the line. But I've just been working on that. That's what I've been doing.
Can you tell us what you're working on, though, Greg? Or are you keeping that hush hush?
I'm keeping that under wraps.
Okay.
I've got a few more things I want to get in place before I start talking it up. But
I got one question though. Is it Shadowdark-ish or a different system?
It is inspired by Shadowdark. So
inspired by Shadowdark. Okay.
To me, and I talked about this a little bit on the long interview with Joe.
You talked about everything on Joe's interview.
But
yeah.
The thing with Shadowdark for me is that it's created this very tight gameplay loop where you gain a little bit of power and then you burn it off through carousing, and you never really get that. Oh wow, Vance spelled his own name wrong, or he's now Venice.
Yeah, Venice.
What's up, Venice?
How you doing, sweetheart?
So, like I was saying, so it creates this very tight gameplay loop, and he couldn't take it. He has to continue.
We bullied him.
It doesn't matter. He's Venice for the night. It doesn't matter what he does.
Even when you get high level, there's still this like incredibly high pressure. Like you're right under the gun. It's you don't have the kind of confidence that even, I mean, you guys in like a system like OSC, as old school as that is, at 5th level, you're pretty robust. Like you can take you can manage conflicts. If you're 5th level in Shadowdark, you can get killed with 1 or maybe 2 bad rolls. I mean, like it's really close to death. So taking that kind of gameplay loop and I'm applying it to a new genre. It's outside of the medieval fantasy genre. There have been a lot of people who've done some things with Shadowdark outside of that. That's one of the reasons why I'm not kind of talking about things until I have a lot more in place, because I don't want somebody to think I'm trying to like tread on their idea. And
makes sense.
Putting it together again to really bring a game, just like a game everybody's familiar with, that does not play like an old school game and I'm going to make it into a very tight, intense, high octane gameplay loop compared to what it normally feels like. So it's gonna be an application of the lessons of Shadowdark to
Well,
a new system.
without grilling the chubby, as we're saying tonight, and pushing you too far, Greg, is this just a way for you to take a break, maybe, and clear your head before? Because I know you're going to stay probably roll with Shadowdark. Well, Shadowdark
I'm still definitely supporting Shadowdark. I still have a whole plan for all kinds of stuff I'm doing for Shadow Sun as the next phase of Shadowdark connected materials. I just don't. Well, in general, I don't linger on one thing and just grind it to death because it burns me out. So, like, if I had released Shadow Sun and then I just kept producing stuff for Shadow Sun over and over, eventually I wouldn't want to do it. And I always want to be working on something that I want to do. Like I get up in the morning and I'm like, I have these ideas. I want to get this, get these ideas on paper. And, I'm riding in the car and I think about it, constantly thinking of ideas. I don't want to be dreading that I have to go home tonight and write this thing that I don't want to write. That's just the only way I can keep moving. And it's been successful from a business perspective because having one Shadowdark property, like a lot of people have, there's been quite a few creators that have made a really good single product, but then that's just their only tentpole. And so if somebody doesn't like that, then they're never going to be learning that much about you as a creator, as not moving into being like a customer that's a fan of your work. So I try to have a diverse amount of stuff so that if somebody might like, they're really into Skyrim, so they play Shadowrim, and then they go, well, I've never played Dark Sun or anything related to that, but I'm going to check out this Shadow Sun because it's written by Chubby Funster and I like that stuff. So that kind of thing. I think by having a diverse stable, I mean, we've looked at stuff before. I think right now, because it's been over a month since I released the 2 books that I released at the end of February, it's kind of subsided. But there was a time when I was 6 of the top 12 Shadowdark properties on drive-through.
Yes,
so by having that diverse schedule, it really helps from a customer perspective. I have a lot of people, when something drops, I see comments in the Facebook group like, well, it's by Chubby Funster, so I'm just going to get this.
Yep.
I've seen that, and that's really nice to see. Very humbling, fantastic. I would not have thought that would be where we are now, even a year ago. It's been a pretty incredible expansion.
But are you going to be Formoria? Or are you just going to let them keep the #1 spot?
Well, they have the #1 spot, but I don't know how. It's because it's only an Electrum.
I know, but it's also $30.
I know they made
us.
Yeah,
that's
and I'm
why.
told how is it still in the no shade? I mean, I've looked at it. It's a perfectly fine product as far as I can tell. I haven't read it in detail, but I try to conduct a little opposition research.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's still that's what I wonder about. It's the algorithm that I'm wondering here. It has nothing to do with Formoria. Like Formoria is on an Electrum, so that's 250 to 500 sales, and I've got multiple I've got 3 different books that are almost to gold.
Let's see here.
500.
Expanded equipment, gold. Novice magic, Electrum. Expanded characters options, gold. Sunless Fane, silver. Last Candle, silver. Shadow Sun, platinum. We got Player's Companion, gold. Shadow Rim, Electrum. To Die For, silver. GM Companion, you have to switch your thing. It says Electrum, but it's gold, Greg.
Oh, it just passed then. Within the past day, because I checked literally a day ago.
I checked today, and it is gold.
Close. Yeah,
and then Terra Invictus is silver. Yep. So you'll have to update your GM Companion because it is now golden.
Hey, Austin Walker in the chat asked a question about, do you ever delete a bunch of old ideas or system bits you put aside? And that reminds me of one of the questions I was thinking of, because I was, I guess a week or so ago, one of those other chats asking you about The Last Candle. I love the French medieval setting and all that. And I think it's 100 Years' War, that period. Is that something you would, I mean, maybe for people that don't know, tell them what Last Candle was and still is, they can still buy it. And is that the kind of thing you might pull up and redo at some point?
Let me share the screen here real quick.
Please.
This is my unused concepts folder.
Here we go.
There you go, Austin. You got an answer.
Yeah. So this is just tons of ideas that I've had over the years that I never turned into a product. Some of them are not even in a folder, just loose. Like this was a map that I made as like a little kind of Polynesian setting. And it doesn't switch when I open it up.
Shadowdark on Gilligan's Island. I like that.
But yeah, let me. Oh, I misclicked. Let me stop sharing and then share this map again.
Sure.
It's weird. It's weird from a user perspective to like double click on an item and it doesn't transfer over the share. But so this is that map. And I thought this could be like a Waterworld type setting or a Polynesian setting. I really loved, there was a Indiana Jones game called Indiana Jones and the Infernal Machine. And there was a part where he went to an island in the Pacific where there were all these ruins of the Japanese that had been left behind from World War II. So something like that, like it's some kind of cool island setting. Yeah. The first Far Cry video game had that kind of feel to it as well. So just, I just never developed it. Right.
Yeah. So Austin, don't throw any of that away.
Yeah,
he's saying he's tempted to delete his stuff. So don't delete any of your
stuff. Don't delete it.
Never delete your stuff.
I've had stuff that I've come back to after 5+ years, and I still had the map for it or the idea that I developed. I'm just looking for. It's not in unused concepts because it got moved to the Last Candle folder.
And also, sometimes you find, like, you remember you wrote something that was pretty cool. You might not use it for the thing that you were writing for, but you might write something new in the future. And then you go, oh, I could use that for that piece. I have what I call a WIP folder, work in progress, and it's just filled with, I don't know how many. I don't even want to look how many adventures are just sort of half started.
Oh yeah. I'm pulling up.
Got another one there, Greg?
An old file. So I had an original idea. Well, this is kind of not as great. This is an old InDesign file that has a lot of problems with it.
It's like, no, I don't want to open.
All right, so I'm gonna share this, but you'll see a lot of alerts of things that are not, like links that are inactive and all kinds of crap is wrong with this file. But Montaner is the mountain on the Last Candle's map. And the original plan was that Last Candle was going to kind of be like the village of Hamlet for a big mega dungeon that I was going to build down in that place. So I had, started, writing stuff. I write in layout. I talked about that on an interview with Joe. If you want to talk about it. So I just, fill out tons of stuff and then fill it in. Like, so here's missing stuff, it's just there's missing thing. And as I write, I fill things in, so I haven't written anything about this town really, just a little bit that's in Last Candle.
Well, the reason I ask is because in Terra Invictus, obviously now you're using the iconography, that kind of thing for it. So it's easy to zip through. And, I have Last Candle. I'm looking through the PDF and I'm like, he could probably reface this thing and update it.
Well, that was originally written for basically generic, like an OSE type Labyrinth Lord framework.
Oh, okay.
And then that was when Tim originally played it.
Yep.
And then
Didn't I play it with you with Ambitions and Avarice? Wasn't it tied into that, or was that something separate?
I think we did play it with Ambition and Avarice.
Okay.
But yeah, because a lot of these stat blocks are Ambition and Avarice stat blocks. I can just tell.
Yeah.
So we go through. I wish I could go through everything and update. Like even when I opened up Shadow Sun to start looking at doing the kind of Zine expansion to it, and then expand off of that, I saw tons of things. You know, it's only been 2 years since I wrote Shadow Sun. I opened up. I'm like, oh God, who wrote this crap? There's all this stuff I would fix here. You know, that's the way it is. You know,
Yep.
if I had, you know, so far I'm really appreciative of your praise for it, Mike, but I just have not gotten a lot of people who've come to me and said, I felt like this was really great.
It's probably because of the French thing. It's like Averoigne with Clark Ashton Smith, you know, the Cthulhu adjacent stuff that he wrote. And he has a whole game setting. I think it's for Call of Cthulhu. I actually bought the book from a local store because I liked the French setting. But Tim was joking about it on one of the other calls. He's like, I can never pronounce those words. And I think Americans, of course, you know, they hear the words and they're like, no, I'm not even going to try that stuff. So they probably stay away from the French stuff. And all they know is Henry V and you know, some Scots and kilts, but they don't know.
At the time I wrote it originally, I was kind of complaining on Google Plus at the time. That's how long ago it was.
Wow.
I was complaining that we have this kind of generic fantasy. This will answer Austin Walker's question as well. We have this idea of generic fantasy, and really what it is a Northern European, excluding France even. Sometimes, a lot of times France is included in Northern European, but at least the northern half of France, not Aquitaine, I'll concede. But Languedoc, there's Occitan influence in southern France. I don't need to get into that anyway. But so when we think of it, we think of northern Europe, particularly British Isles, Saxony, which even though modern day Saxony is kind of in central Germany, in the medieval times, Saxony was along the northeast German coast, north of the Netherlands, basically. The Netherlands, Denmark, Scandinavia as a whole, the whole peninsula, and then maybe the southern Baltic coast. And I think a lot of that is because that was a huge source of inspiration to J.R.R. Tolkien, which is fantastic. I think it's, legendary work. But it's an Anglo-Saxon epic. It's not a pure, total European epic. And there's tons of European history in just southern France, Spain, northern Italy, the Balkans, that adds a huge amount. But people don't know, you think they have trouble with French words, Mike. Throw some Croatian, throw some Czech words in there, throw some Hungarian words that aren't even based off of the same Latin language tree, like all kinds of stuff like that. People have a very hard time. And in the setting I wrote for Adventure Conquer King 2, Warlords of Gavardia, I had kind of, what do these different languages sound like? Because why would there be such a huge amount of space with everybody having basically Germanic English naming structure? So I went through and I created tons of names for noble families and locations and all this stuff based off of Hungarian, Ethiopian, the kind of using Portuguese instead of Spanish in some places, and Spanish instead, but like to create real differences in how it was talked about, and like it's the same kind of problem with Last Candle. Unfortunately, it hasn't been as successful as I would have liked it to be. So I think, people just, they have a particular way they want to hear and write and see the fantasy names and words, and they stick with it.
Do you think it's because it's too human centric without, because I haven't dug into Last Candle. Is there not enough magic, not enough spells, not enough what they're expecting from a D&D or a Shadowdark?
I think the kind of when they see a bunch of names like that, Tim being a great offender example, they read it and they're like, what is a Kasakuto? I don't know how to pronounce this. Is that Kasikotu or what? And then when they start going into the story side of it, I haven't heard a lot of complaints about the dungeon design or anything like that for the kind of, because it's just a starting dungeon with some basic monsters in it. But the main critique has been the French language stuff. And it hasn't been brutal, but it's just been people like, I don't really like it.
Well, I think the other thing you have to consider too is like for every GM companion or player's companion like you make, there's 100 adventures that get released too.
That's right. Yeah.
There's just such a glut because adventures, there's so many out there too. So sometimes I think if you did a companion, like say you did your thing and it was like a companion adventure that went with it, you'd probably see a jump up spike in sales too, just because it was made from, it came from your other stuff. So like, we know that, this is good by, Chubby Funster, when he's releasing this, was in conjunction with this GM companion. Like if you wrote an adventure using what you have in your GM companion for that and use like the specialized stuff that you have, I think you would get a pretty good jump in sales.
Well, that may very well be. I don't know.
No, I don't know either.
Yeah, my observation, just looking at sales trends as an indicator of what the market is interested in, so to speak, is the higher level up it is in terms of setting design, in terms of abstraction, the more sales it is. The GM companion has been the fastest. I hate to use this language after D&D 2024.
Right, the fastest
selling, but it has been the fastest selling thing I've released because I think people see an immediate. I can take this, I can use it in any system I want. I can use it in OSE if I want to. They can just take it. Whereas if it's a specific adventure for a specific system, then it's just got less appeal. And I don't talk about this a lot because it's kind of an ego hit in a way, but the Terra Invictus version for Ambition and Avarice 2 was released 2 years ago, and the Terra Invictus for Shadowdark was released 1 month ago, and the Shadowdark version has surpassed the sales already of the ANA 2 version. So from a production standpoint, it's like you got to look at what people people would say you're selling out or whatever. I'm just looking for what the market is interested in doing. I'm not going to force myself to write crap I don't want to do, but if I have energy, I'm going to direct it towards the things I think will be most well received.
Is Austin Walker just yanking our chain on the comments, or did you really write something for Vermis?
I don't know what Vermis even is.
So he's yanking our chain. Well done, Austin. Congratulations. It's an art book that came out, I think, around the same time Merkborg did, and by I think a French artist named Plastaboo, has a fake name. I don't know what that means, but really cool stuff. Just great art. It's not really a game system, but there's a Vermis 1 and a Vermis 2. They're really hard to get in print, and I think they're produced in France. But man, Vermis is really just great flavor stuff. Kind of like the same way I look at Merkborg, really. Grab an idea.
Well, art is a huge component of cost. And I was really interested in the conversation that happened on the Dungeons and Dyslexia podcast on YouTube. He interviewed I'm terrible with names. The guy who wrote Gods of the Forbidden North.
Oh,
yeah. And he was, I mean, very successful guy. It's an awesome product. I have it. I've looked through it. It's awesome. I wish I had the time in my life to run it. I just don't.
Right.
But he was talking about production costs and said that he had spent, I think I'm saying this accurately, between the first two Kickstarters, $90,000 on art in order to make, because it's such a huge book.
Holy shit.
And he was doing unique pieces for each one and all this stuff. And I mean, that is so
That's
much
some
money to spend
confidence.
on art.
Whew.
Yeah.
good
So
grief.
I see it as a trade-off of you can't, the more you invest in art, you're going to get more people coming in to look at it. That's just probably just a pure arithmetic function. But there's also the amount of profits that you're throwing away by doing that, right? And so there's kind of like a Pareto curve where like if you go too far, it starts to become the
risk.
non optimal, whatever the economic term would be, and suboptimal. And
A
so
big sunk cost. You're not
so
going to
for
get
me, my big focus is on trying to do stuff with a minimum of expense by looking at things not like AI. Like Austin just brought up AI. I don't use AI at all, but there's a lot of public domain images that you can use a few Photoshop filters on and turn them into even pictures that are like photograph quality resolution. If you use the right Photoshop filters, you can turn it into a drawing. I mean, like my logo that is where my face is right now is an image that my wife took of me giving a thumbs up in Philadelphia like 10 years ago.
I thought that was Henry Winkler as Fonzie.
No. But yeah, I mean, you can just use a few filters and it'll be black and white. And why spend $90K on art if you can find a way to get by with $80K? You know, like that's for me. I will always be looking for some way to spend less.
Do you have a regular team now of artists that you collaborate with on a regular basis, or is it a pool and you pick them and choose them for different projects?
I've been rolling drive-through profits into stock art purchases for a long time. And so I have a really big folder of tons of stock art. I have a folder of public domain art that I've converted over the years. Here, I'll show you this. It's amazing to me that this thing exists even. But there's a foundation that did some kind of like an encyclopedia or something. I don't know what it's called, but the abbreviation is PSF. Okay, so let me show you this. This is the folder of all the ones that I've pulled, which is maybe 10% of the images. Okay, and let me just change this to extra large icons, right? So these are all like they're in an encyclopedia, right? I mean, it's basic images. I wanted to scroll down. Okay, but as you go through it, you can find a lot of images that you can use in an RPG context, right? There's a badger right there, right? Or a baboon. You know, you could have like this baboon could easily be a rock ape. You know what I mean? Like as a monster,
right? Yeah.
Right. There's ships that you can use, birds, insects, dogs, all kinds of stuff. Right. Here's a Berber woman from medieval Spain. She could be a noblewoman in your adventure, whatever. Right. I've used her before. All sorts of stuff. Like so. This is just like I said. This is like 10% of the archive that I've pulled images out of.
Wow.
And sometimes you get, stuff like this, which is a little bit not so great. You might use that if you were doing like a King Arthur themed thing, and it was okay for it to look kind of like it was drawn by a medieval person. Like if I was writing a Pendragon adventure, I could do that.
Oh, don't mention Pendragon. You remember you were supposed to be running a game tonight for us, but
I was supposed to. Like I love this horse. I've used it in quite a few. This Photoshop version is kind of cleaned up a little bit, so that it looks more like Shadowdarky than encyclopedic. But you can like hyenas, this weird idol, all kinds of stuff that you can put into a game. So it's just a matter of searching for things like that. And I'm doing a lot of stuff like in Shadow Sun. This oasis would be good, good image to use. That's all there. It's just a matter of being diligent. It takes a long time to go through, 2,000 images on Wikimedia and look them all up. That's just it's just a time cost.
Time. Yeah.
Venice, what do you use? Venice.
Calling Venice.
He didn't even answer.
Yeah, I got my real name in there now. I use.
You're gonna be Venice tonight, yeah.
Public image stuff. I use Wikimedia. I have a pretty good sized folder with just links to various archives of various like pulp and public domain available artists. Like, I can't remember any of the names, but yeah. But they're same thing. It's and some stock art as well that I've downloaded. But yeah, most of my stuff ends up being from various pulp artists and things.
Yeah, Greg, I'm going to show you one of my, because I divide my artwork by artist and then by subject, because like if I had to go through all those again, it would drive me nuts. So let's see. I forgot how to share my damn thing.
Paul, what we need is like a Watergate break-in over at Tim's house and get in there and hack our way into those files, and then we'd have all kinds of cool artwork.
So like each one of those files, like I have like adventure seeds, equipment, and then I have a whole list of monsters, animal, humanoid, monsters, aquatic, monster gorgons, hags, humanoids. So that way, when I need a hag, I don't have to go through all those fucking. It takes a lot of time to set up, but once I have it set up, it's nice. I can just go right to the folder and find what I need and that. And then I divide them up. But then there's another folder where I have them by artist. So just in case, because sometimes when I create a thing, I want the artwork to be like from one artist and to have the same kind of feel or theme to it. So,
well, let me show you some this trick, and I'm not going to show you exactly how to do it. You're going to have to learn for yourself, people.
Absolutely.
But this is a very weird image that I found.
Do I want to share this image? I can't quite see it, but it looks disturbing, right?
It's some kind of weird festival in Poland. You can see the Krakowski here in the text on the background, right? Some kind of weird performance art in the street. I don't even know what's going on. It's on Wikimedia Commons. Okay. With the power of Photoshop, you can turn that into this.
Yeah.
Right? So it looks kind of like a noir. Who knows what's happening?
Succubi.
You could do whatever. And then if you wanted to frame this as like a Shadowdark page where you have off like a chapter transition page or whatever, that's could be really like, who knows what that is. Like, so you can you can use effects like that to take images you wouldn't have thought or would be useful. And I've sufficiently changed it that there's no kind of visual identity issue with her anymore. I don't have to worry about her being upset that I used her image, that kind of thing. So just get creative with your photoshopping and your picture selection, because who would have looked at that original picture and thought, oh, this is going to be a great role-playing game photo?
I thought it was probably from Joe's bar mitzvah. I'm guessing. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it could be
the after party or something.
Paul, you were going to ask a question there.
Well, I was going to say, I use Canva, and Canva has quite a bit of black and white art. It has, all kinds of things that you can mess with. So, I mean, it has black and white. It has your cartoonish style. It has, various things you do, and it has plenty of filters. It has plenty of, the things that I put into the zine. It kind of covers all the bases for me, so I don't have to do as much. All I'm doing is it's a searchable database anyway. So, and there's always artists, contributing. Now, sometimes I'll use, and this is an artist I think that Chubby has used, is Jeremy Hart, and I've used some of his art in one of my ones. I think in one of the zines, and he has great art for OSR or Shadowdark or those kind of darker type of things.
It is very unique. It's not like
yes,
I could recognize it, except for a couple pieces. I could recognize it instantly as being his art.
He's got his own style, absolutely.
Yep. And in the future, I'm probably going to pay him for a few pieces. I mean, his rates are fairly reasonable for what he offers. And so, shout out to Jeremy. Go see Jeremy Hart. He's on Drive Through RPG, and he has a bunch of folios and a bunch of things. So, and for me, all I had to do was say, "Hey, can I use this? Attribute him in the zine." And then, put a link, and I put links to his Patreon or to his page or whatever it may be. And, it's a fairly, balanced type of thing. You don't want to make, he makes his own monster books, things like that. Of course, artists are trying to avoid people making their own, supplements with their stuff. Yeah, their own collections. That's what the big fear is amongst artists. They say, look, just don't make a collection out of it, and you'll work against me because I'm trying to sell my old collections. And he's got these folios on Drive Through that are really, really good, and his Patreon is very, very good. So
yeah.
Hey Tim,
go ahead. I'm sorry, Mike.
I was just going to ask you if it's okay, going back to Shadowdark for a second with Greg about Terra Invictus.
Of course.
I wouldn't want to put, and it doesn't matter, and I'm going to say it anyway, but we're not trying to compare Western Reaches with Terra Invictus, but I am. So I did the Kickstarter and all that too, but I'm looking at Terra Invictus here. Just take us back a step, if you would, Greg, and introduce Terra Invictus and what is special about this world setting. Give us some background on where that started and how it started, and what somebody, if they want to go pick it up on Drive Through, what they can expect to find.
Terra Invictus was a Ambition and Avarice 2 setting, like I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
And I had developed what I thought it was just a cool way of organizing the information, right? And I used all these icons in order to denote different things. So when you're the GM, everybody's been here. The party just went into a place that you hadn't prepped, a room, a hex, whatever it is, and you're like, oh my god, I have to read this in like,
can I build a 93 ranked overall team on Madden?
And was that you?
Somebody texted me, and then all of a sudden my sound burst.
Oh, I thought that was Rob. I thought it was Rob AI trying to chime in.
Yeah, Rob AI, be careful. He's coming after Greg. He's his first one. He's coming after.
So your party goes into a new hex. You haven't prepped the hex at all. You're the GM. You're like, what are the parts of this information? And I hate it when you get through the thing, and at the very end it says, oh yeah, and there's 10 orcs that are right there. Like, you didn't lead with the 10 orcs, so now it seems like you described this room to the players without knowing what the hell's going on, that kind of thing. So I created these icons so the GM could just really quickly find anything that they needed that was in the hex. And then it had in the ANA 2 version, there's dungeons in there. I didn't. If I'd ported over the dungeons to Shadowdark, it would have been a 1,000-page book. But the Shadowdark's text style takes so much more space than 8.5 by 11 at 10.
But if Greg tells you there's no giant eagles in the hex next to you, it's full of shit.
Whatever. You're just mad about these giant eagles. So there's there's a lot more to be mad about. Yeah, but
I'm looking at your table of contents, and you have 39 deities for each alignment.
yeah,
I mean,
yes.
Good
So
grief.
God,
Yeah,
literally.
that's-
God.
in ambition and avarice, let me just pull up ambition and avarice, and I'll show you. Ambition and avarice has a portfolio system that I use to create this stuff. So let me just go to the cosmology.
Because Terra Invictus hasn't it seen 3? Because it was ambitious avarice, and then it was I can't think of the Adventure Conquer King, and now it's Shadowdark. Hasn't it gone through 3 different
It
versions?
hasn't been for Venture Conquer King. I wish I had that kind of time. That would be an even heavier lift. So in Ambition Avarice 2, it divides the portfolios up into these groupings, right? And it encourages the GM to create unique combinations each time, right? So in one world, you might have somebody who has metals and magma, and it's like a dwarven god, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then in another world, it might be somebody who has stone and magma, and it's more like a Polynesian volcano god, right? So you could just mix up these portfolios however you wanted. So when I went to go make the deities for when I made it in Ambition and Avarice, I just divided all these up, and I created gods for each portfolio.
Well, you took it a step further. I like the pilgrimage and the acts of devotion idea, especially if you're like a paladin or a cleric or something. There's a whole lot more for them to do.
That's right, and that was an innovation into the Shadowdark version. So what happened was, as I started doing all this conversion work, I realized that the icons could be used for solo play guidance. And then I had to kind of reconvert it. Yes, like I had already moved all the text over into a new file, and everything was organized and moved around and changed into the new paragraph styles and all this stuff. And then I was like, oh man, I have to go through and actually put these things in a hierarchy so that it's like you move into the hex and you resolve them in a sequence rather than just the information's organized by those things. So I had to go through a secondary rebuild process, but now it's designed so like when you go into the hex, you resolve these things going down in sequence as a solo player, and you don't need a GM to run it. Yeah. Right. So you go into the hex, there's weather, there's a first look. Then if the next thing is a monster, then if you aren't just passing through the hex, that you're resolving that monster. And then once you resolve that monster, if there's treasure under that, you get it. If there's something else under that, you resolve that. You just keep going down like resolving things in a lone wolf, choose your own adventure type interaction. And you can still definitely run it as a normal campaign.
I love the element of solo play though, and I think you're probably going to see that in a lot more stuff. Would that be something in your Shadowdark stuff in the future you would
definitely, because
always include? It seems like people are playing more and more.
It's 2 birds with 1 stone.
Yeah,
So let me just pull up the map here real quick, and then I'll share that.
Sure. Has Matt tried it yet, Greg?
He said that he's been looking at it, but I don't think he's written up or done any recordings.
Oh, okay. Because these are Mr. Solo play, so I was wondering
so this is the Terra Invictus map. And one of the starting towns, there's 3 starting towns: Morio, Cascais, and Bulgaria. And Tim started in Morio. So we're going to zoom in here a little bit. So the problem that Tim had is, I believe it's 3119 right here.
I believe my question was before I left, because you said if I get a mule, the only thing I have to worry about is Chinese. I said, is there any local? And you said, no, you shouldn't have any trouble with them. The first hex I go into, first fucking hex.
So there's a giant eagle that lives here. Well, because there's a D6 encounter table for every hex, the giant eagle is in this hex, but it's also in all of the surrounding hexes and some of the 2 hexes out, because it hunts, right? It flies around. You wouldn't expect a giant eagle to hunt within a 6-mile radius like it's huge. It can fly a long way. So Tim kept retreating away from the giant eagle and then rolling the giant eagle in the new hex that he had retreated into. And that is why he believes there are giant eagles all over the
everywhere.
map. But
So
there
Tim
is
is hex
only
challenged.
there are only 2 giant eagles. There's one right here by Morio, and there's one down here on Norvane. That's it. There's only 2. But I bet if Tim started a new game, he'd start here, sail across. The first thing he ran into would be a goddamn giant eagle.
No doubt.
That's just the way it is.
Hey, going back real quick to talking about deities in the game and the work on religion and all that in Terra Invictus. I got my Shadowdark here, and my favorite thing in this entire book is the fact, just that little semi-paragraph, I don't remember the page, where she's talking about deities and she's like, these are the 9, right? And but there's 2 lost gods and everybody's forgotten her. For me, I'm like, wow, she left us all that room to be able to just go and run nuts with it and write your own story about these 2 lost gods, which is something I want to visit in my own game one day. But I'm sure at some point somebody's going to write something. How does that work with Kelsey? I mean, do you guys talk? I mean, I know you talk, but do you her drafts, or you talk about ideas you're working on to kind of get an official, hey, that's cool? Or, I mean, I know she wants people to iterate and create and add things to the game.
I go to her when when you're getting close to the line. You just do, okay? Anybody who's like, oh, I had no idea, they're full of shit. Okay, they knew they were getting close to the line. So I'll give you an example from Shadow Rim. In Shadow Rim, there is an eye. I put it in as an homage to her. Now in Skyrim, there is a part of the quest line for the Mages College called the Eye of Magnus. Right. So I thought, okay, this will be where I can put my arcane eye. Right. So I wanted something that was kind of an homage to her, that I recognize that, I'm making this off of her system. So, I mean, this is the page. And so I wrote up this thing about there being an arcane eye underneath the Arcanum that's being excavated by the College of Magehold, Winterhold in Skyrim. And, if you get down there, there's this powerful relic, right? And it lets you, basically it grants you a wish, but it imposes a cost on you equal to the value of the wish. So if you wish for somebody to be brought back to life, it'll kill somebody. If you wish for a bunch of money, it'll take that money away from somebody somewhere, right? So it's like
taxes.
Yeah, it's like everything is evened out. And I had this eye that I was going to put there, and so I sent her this page, and I said, "Are you cool with me doing this? Because I don't want to get this in print and then have you go, oh, Arcane Eye is violation of my copyright or whatever, my trademark, whatever it was." And she wrote back and she was like, "No, I don't think there's any problem." Right. So I have conversations like that with her. And when she has a success, I send her a positive message and she sends me a positive message when things are working out for me. So it's good. We're on good terms. And sometimes she reached out when I said that I was going to be doing a burnt scroll. And she said that that's a little bit too, she's, her lawyers are like, yeah, you can't do it. It's too close to the Cursed Scroll thing. And would you please not do it? So I changed the name. Not a problem. I'd rather do that before you get it in print, and, be respectful of her. Even if she just came back and said, there's no IP problem, but I just don't really want you to do that. I wouldn't do it.
It's too good a thing. Why would you?
Yeah. Why would I? There's no point in upsetting her for anything. And just like if somebody was going to do something derivative of what I'd done, a venture for Shadow Sun or whatever, I would hope they would treat me the same way. That's just, you know, unless you're like, it's a risk to say this out loud, I guess, but Kevin Sambieta goes after people with a fucking vengeance, like, because of some minor problem.
He's an expert at that.
Yeah, unless you're, generally, most people are pretty cool if you are respectful to them first.
Yeah.
The basic expert has been going through, he's calling it his villain arc, where he's just tired of people coming onto his channel and throwing a bunch of shit in the chat. And then when he responds back with the same level of vitriol, then they're like, oh, you're being so mean to me, blah, 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 blah. It's like, if you can't take the heat, get out of the kitchen. Don't come throwing fireballs on me and then be surprised when I fight back. So I think if you just treat people nice, it'll be good. And that's every time Kelsey comes up, everybody feels almost compelled to be like, she's just the nicest person, and I would have no,
right.
I think that's how much more brand value can you have than that?
Right. I mean, she's just she's genuine, and I mean, she brings to the hobby what we want in the hobby. I mean, she's the exact opposite of Wizards of the Coast. She has value. Wizards of the Coast doesn't. Yeah. She's definitely a gamer through and through, and has been very open about allowing people to. I mean, there's a whole industry now because of her. There's a whole Shadowdark industry churning out. I don't. I would love to see how her send Joe a memo. See how their Kickstarters did. As a whole, like Shadowdark, just because of her release a few years back.
Well, I definitely believe. I mean, I did release 2 books. I had no idea that the Western Reaches was going to go off when it did. Part of that could have been I wasn't looking for that through every message. I was busy finishing off these books, but I had 2 books that I wrapped up right at the same time, and then she hit with her Kickstarter. And so I do believe that I got a lot of sales from them being brand new books. That always happens.
That's what I was going to remember. That question
the
I was holding back.
Kickstarter went off at the same time was just incredibly fortuitous.
Yeah.
The Player's Companion, I think, sold more copies in March than it did any other month, even its first month of publication. So that doesn't happen really. From a sales perspective, you generally have a high start and then it goes down, and unless you update it goes down. But to have it just come out of nowhere, and I hadn't said anything to promote it, I hadn't been anywhere doing a bunch of talked about it, nothing, and it went crazy gangbusters. So her impact of her Kickstarter has been very good for me.
How does expanded equipment do?
You can learn from. So
expanded equipment,
expanded equipment and expanded character options. Sorry, it's hard sometimes to remember all the exact titles. Were released as PDF onlys, right? And then after a while, I was like, okay, I need to combine these into one POD option for people to have. That's what the Player's Companion is.
Right.
But you can look at the difference in sales between the 2 things to see what people are more interested in. And people are maybe 20% more interested in the equipment than in the character options, right? So I think people were looking for, they get Shadowdark, they say, man, there's just not a ton of equipment in this book. Is there more equipment? And then they go and Google it, and that's what they get. I think that's what happens. Yeah. And is less people are going, I need more classes.
Yeah. So I think that was the first thing I bought of yours was expanded equipment. And I almost feel like it ought to be like core rule book, volume 2. I mean, I know it's not as thick and it doesn't impact the basic rules, but all of the additional armor, like, Brigandine and all these things that I think a lot of people were like, hey, I love Shadowdark. I love the brevity and how tight it is. But being able to add, some extra things, You know, why can't I have a falchion or, you know, some other weapon type? Plus all the spell catalyst stuff. We were talking last week how cool that is, because you can really build all kinds of little story bits and pieces around that in any game, whether it's solo or playing with a group.
Yeah, and I'm going to be revisiting some of that with the Western Reaches coming out, because she's changing things enough that there's going to be a need for, you know, it won't be called a Western Reaches companion for obvious reasons, but it, you know, some kind of a companion book that will offer a similar thing for the Western Reaches situation. And I don't know exactly what's in Western Reaches yet. Obviously, all I have is preview PDFs, but I've built out a lot of layout frame just based on that, expanding out equipment sections and stuff. So, like in the expanded equipment, there's a D100 table of adventuring gear. And what happens when you do that is sometimes you have like 18 items that could really go on their own table, but they got put on there. And then there was another one that, you know, maybe you could have made into a D8 or a D10 table, but they're included in there. And so I started separating those things out so that you could have a, you know, a D20 table of basically like camping and climbing equipment. And then you could have a D20 table of some other kind of subset. And then what that does is it creates, maybe I only have 16 entries on this D20 table. I need to add 4 new pieces of equipment. And then over time, that ends up being a lot of stuff as you build, as you expand everything out. And then there's a lot of times where there might be like 12 items in the current version, and I'm like, okay, let's just bump that up to D20. Let's find 20. Let's find 8 new options to fill this out, so it's a good D20 table. And by doing that kind of thing, I kind of force myself to keep building on the edges rather than going, okay, this is done, you know. And so I've built out that framework. I'm waiting for her to drop the PDFs for Western Reaches, and then I'm going to go through that and see what opportunity there is for me. Because when I was on Joe's interview, he asked me, what would you say is the brand distinguishing feature of Chubby Funster? Like, what do you always know you're going to get with a Chubby Funster thing or whatever? And I didn't know how to answer that at first, because I'm like, I don't know that I have a signature mark or anything. But eventually I was like, you know, maybe it's that when I see a list of things, I'm like, how can we expand this list? Right? How can we, you know, if there's a table with 2d6 traps on it, I'm like, let's get this up to a D20 table of traps. You know, let's keep pushing the envelope. And so I'm going to go through Western Reaches and say, what did she keep to a D12 table because she had limited space, and I don't have that limited space. So I'm going to blow it out to a D20 table. I'm going to blow it out to a bigger size. And, you know, that's how I got GM Companion. That's how I got Player Companion, is looking for how can I add to this list and come up with, you know, a new way of experiencing the game. Because I think, especially like equipment's a great example, that if you walk into Hound's Head, I'll put it this way: if you walk into Hound's Head and you want to get yourself a pair of manacles, okay, and your GM says, well, there's really no manacles in Hound's Head, and you're like, I need manacles. And then every place you go, you're like, do you have manacles here? Is there anybody in manacles over here? If you have manacles, then you can take prisoners and the game expands in that direction. There's all kinds of things you can do with a prisoner in manacles that you can't do if you tie it up. I hate to break this to any noobs out there, but if you tie up a prisoner with rope, okay, the first thing the GM is going to do is find some shard of sharp object that this person is going to get into their hand and cut their way out of the rope. It is inevitable. Okay, you cannot You cannot keep someone tied up with rope in a Dungeons and Dragons game. It just does not work. So,
and if you're gonna have Greg in your campaign, you better have manacles.
That's right. You better have some damn manacles. So that's what that's what I think about equipment. Having the equipment expands your potential, right? Like if you don't have manacles, you can't take prisoners, and then you can't do things with prisoners, right? So adding the manacles adds to your game. Adding everything, adding even as a basket in there so that you can take one hand and turn it into 2 gear slots. It says I'm losing connection.
Sounds like it. We still hear you, but you are breaking up a little bit.
Okay. So just being able to turn one hand into 2 gear slots makes a big difference when you're at the bottom of the dungeon and you're trying to figure out how you're going to carry this stuff out. And you're like, what are we going to leave? Am I going to leave this sword behind? Am I going to leave, these herbs? Am I going to leave whatever? The more you add into the game, the more possibilities it opens up for the player. That was a very long answer. Sorry.
Let me go down to our lower group there. They're like the silent, grumpy Muppets, Statler and Waldorf down there. So, Advance or Fire, do you guys have any questions for Chubby at all? Comments or do you guys have you guys? Let me ask you, put you on the spot. Do you own any Chubby Funster game stuff? Books.
Oh,
yeah, I'm putting them on the spot. Vance is nodding slightly. He's like,
yeah.
He's
got it.
He's got proof.
He does.
Yeah,
I know
all
Paul
mine's
does.
are.
Oh yeah, no, I buy in, and I'll probably buy in a couple more things too. Yeah, I mean, I like the granularity of this stuff. I don't have the mental bandwidth to create these kind of kind of stuff, and so I appreciate when people do, because my shelf and and file piles over here are there's a lot of stuff that I may not use anything wholesale, but I will definitely I definitely tend to grab individual items or tables or whatever like that from these sort of things. So that's always good, because it's good to drop things. Talking on that manacle thing, I know that I can't remember if it was a campaign I was playing in or I was running, but there was like multiple sessions where the party was trying to get enough resources into a location to buy a crowbar. That was the party quest for like 3 sessions. Just to have that
mud.
Just to have that additional kind of resource, whatever advantage, so I get that. That's a really good cue on kind of how to think about dropping stuff like that in for play. And that was a great little hit.
What about you, Mr. Paul? You're contemplating.
Yeah, I want to,
or you have to go to the bathroom. I'm not sure which.
It's down the hall to your left.
Thank you. I'm gonna start calling it a Joe break.
Joe break, shit break.
I gotta go to the Joe.
I gotta go to the Joe.
I have to make a Joe.
I gotta go to the Joe.
I gotta go to the Joe. That's right. No,
I would say make sure you have one in your dungeon.
That's right.
Down the oubliette.
What are some things I'd be interested to know what you're learning maybe from the Shadowdark community? What's the Shadowdark community teaching you? What are some things you're picking up on? You go, I didn't really think about that before. That may have to find a place somewhere, maybe in design, or maybe it's just in a particular little niche part of the book that you haven't thought of yet.
Well, the first thing is that other people see color and maps and graphics different from me. And I don't just mean like color blindness, which is a thing for sure. but I've had, like in Shadowrim, there are pages that I use a Starfield background on. And that's because in Skyrim, there's Starfield background when you're doing your level up stuff, right? So let me just share here so people know what I'm talking about. So that when you level up, instead of a Shadowdark style talent table, you roll a star on this constellation, right? And that's what you get, or one of the others. There's a bunch of them. Okay, and so first off, that in my mind, you get a lot more variability here in what you get, rather than having like if you get a 2, 3, or a 4, it's the same outcome in like a Shadowdark table. There's just a lot more variation here. But I thought this, the graphic, to me, when I look at this looks really good from a graphic design standpoint for me. I was really proud of it. I've had really great feedback from it. I had to go through a few different proof copies in order to make adjustments, because like your first one was too dark. Then I made some adjustments, and then it kind of had like a purple. It like you can see a little bit of the purple in the Starfield right here, but it just had too much of the purple was being drawn out. I try to change it more back towards the blue. It's tough. Printing in color like this is very tough. But when I've got the final thing together, I was like, really, like, this is really good. And then I've had a few people, not many, but I've had a few people come back and say that it just hurts their eyes to look at it. That it's difficult for them to see and read things that to me are pretty easy to see and read. And I'm like, oh, I would not have thought
reverses
about that.
We've known, I'm in advertising, reverses we've known in printing for ages that, difficulty to read and so forth. But it could also be the difference in contrasting. If your colors aren't contrasting enough, for some eyes, they won't be able to pick up on that either.
And I get it. It's just when I look, being a video game person, especially, like, to me, I'm like, look at this. I'm like, this is perfect. And then to have other people, so I try to be more open-minded to the way that a design might impact other people, particularly with mapping. I prefer a satellite map style that I create in Photoshop with cloud layers. I've actually published the thing, not on drive-through, but like on Twitter. Like I've put out how to do it, and I think it looks to me like a Google satellite map. Like it's more like or the NASA's blue marble images of Earth. Like that's the kind of thing that I think of as like really, really good mapping. And then there's a lot of people who would just prefer for it to be a hex with color coding or like a little icon in it, rather than have it have that level of detail. There's people who will put way more emphasis on every single hex number being perfectly legible, rather than being able to go, okay, well, because there's a ton of mountains in this hex, you can't quite read the number as well as the adjacent hex, but you do know how to subtract. So if you just subtract 1 from this hex that's right here, you should know what the hex number is here if you can't read it perfectly. But I have had feedback like that, like that I need help with this. I need help reading this. I can't tell what kind of terrain type this is. And a lot of times it's because I leave the terrain type to the GM a lot of time. Like, you look at the satellite map. Do you think this is a forest, or do you think this is a swamp, or whatever? And just make your call. I don't. It's never been my idea, like, I have to tell you exactly how to handle this situation. And that's kind of, Shadowdark ethos as a whole almost. But that's the kind of, like, people come back to me looking for a specific answer in places where I didn't give one on purpose. I've had things where I said like, this stuns the person for 3 rounds, and I've had people come back and go, there's no definition of stunning in Shadowdark, so what is it? And I'm like, I never would have thought I would need to define stunning to somebody that plays D&D. Like, you're stunned. That's the end of the definition. I don't know what to tell you. Like
Well,
you're stunned.
and there's some
So-
people who desire those definitions, who
Yes.
just cannot. It's part of, I think, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, about playing it right in their mind. It's like, well, I don't want to make sure that I'm not doing something that was not intended to be done. Whereas Shadowdark is saying, right, you're saying, well, it's whatever your way is. That's your way. That's your way of doing it.
With Shadowdark, we first encountered that with invisibility for halflings.
Oh yeah.
What
I
what does
remember
it mean that they're
discussion.
invisible? Does it
Right.
mean does it mean that they're technically not there, or does it mean that when you look you don't see them, like they're really well hidden? Does it, if they attack, does it break? Does all
Right.
these questions came up for people, and Kelsey's like, whatever,
Right.
doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like, what do you want to do?
Ambiguity can drive some people crazy, though.
It
I mean,
does.
just out of their minds, right? They,
Quote the great Bill Clinton and say, well, that depends on what the meaning of is.
yeah, we got to have exact definitions. Which I would have a follow up too, Greg. Is what is, when you learn something, when somebody gives you feedback, right? Or what is something, maybe some other than the color? I know there's people who come back and say, do people come back and say, that's a little overpowered. That's a bit OP, Greg. You made it to whatever.
Yeah.
Or I don't know if you get those type of things, or is there anything that you've heard enough about and you said, well, I went back and changed that because they were probably
generally
right
the
about
only
that.
things that I do that for errors or typos. I guess typos a type of error, but I meant like design errors. Like there was a thing in the early days of the expanded equipment where I believe it was the AC number for one of the armors was just a type. It was the same as another. So there were 2 armors, and one was just basically more expensive than the other. Otherwise, it was identical. And I was like, oh wait, that the AC for that other one should be lower. That was just a typo, and I fixed that. I've had people come back to me and say that they think this class or that ancestry or whatever in player companions unbalanced. Generally, I don't do anything, and the reason why, twofold. One, I got other shit to do in my life. If you feel it's overbalanced, underpowered, whatever it is, just make the change in your game. I don't give a shit. Right? Doesn't affect me.
Yeah, I'll give you an example of one that's missing is exhaustion rules. The only thing I can find is that, if you don't rest within 24 hours, you're exhausted or something. But
that is actually in, I thought the same thing as you for a long time. That is in Curse of Scroll 2.
Oh.
There are rules for, I can't remember exactly. I don't want to bog this down either with that, but I'm pretty sure it's Curse of Scroll 2. If it's not, it's Curse of Scroll 3. I had, when I started doing the design work for.
Oh, stop calling them Zines, guys. You guys are not Deans, not Zines.
Okay. When I
Paul did it too.
When I did it for to start doing the first one for Shadow Sun, excuse me, I went through all of these really carefully because she introduced a lot of rules that I wasn't even using. Like rules for mounts, extra weapons, the ways that, like, just in looking here at Curse Scroll 2 in my hands right now, the way to do poisons, how to do wound. She has like they're called enduring wounds that are like that persistent even though you've been healed.
They fester.
That stick around. Lots of stuff like this. And the main thing is, I realized that what she was doing the whole time, maybe not intentionally at first, but what she was doing is basically
fixing
creating a way of adding a bunch of little rules to a book that already was published. And then you can publish kind of one update, because that's one of the biggest pains in the ass when you're a publisher. Like, how many times am I going to update this file? Then people start to think that
But that's brilliant, because then you can throw it with like a one shot, like she does, and all the other stuff around it, and you're still getting the new rules out, but they're also getting something new and of value to keep playing with.
Yeah, so I think that there's things that you find in there where it's like, oh, okay, she actually already did come up with a solution, and these zines, sorry, Tim, are great. She's got. I thought they were great when they first came out, just from a design perspective, and I hadn't actually run one of them until recently. I ran Curse Scroll 3, which is the Viking one, and they're really great. I had thought of them as just modules at first, that they were just small hex map with adventure. Right. But she introduces a lot of really good rule changes and stuff that add up over time to be a significant improvement to the game.
You're not running anything in North Texas, are you? I think I heard you.
No, I'm selfish.
Yeah, you just. Are you doing that Braunstein game they were talking about that I think Kelsey was going to play in or run or something?
I might show up impromptu and like do something for an hour or two, but I've scheduled some games that I want to play in. I have to run everything that I write at least 2 or 3 times to make sure that it works. So I don't want to run that again for a new group of people. Like, I've already put in the time, you know. If I had a new product that I was like, you know, looking for playtesting on,
maybe those Pendragon books you have in your office.
Oh, you're talking about that? Yeah. I know you keep bringing that up. But that kind of thing, like, I just run so much my own stuff that I don't really have that kind of. So I was just like, look, I'm here for networking, and I want to experience other people's way of doing things and learn from them. I'm in several games that relate to what I'm about to launch my Kickstarter for, like I was talking about at the beginning. And so I want to kind of talk to those people after, you know, say, here's what I'm doing, show them. I'm going to be having a, this is one of the secret advantages of Drive-Thru RPG they don't tell you about, is that you can order a proof copy of anything you want. I could write the next Star Wars RPG using all Star Wars copyrighted art, and I could put the PDF file and send it to Drive-Thru's automated system. Nobody would even look at it, and then poof, I would get a copy of this book that I wrote. Like, you can do anything you want.
Tim, he just spilled the beans. That's his next thing. He wasn't going to tell us about earlier for Shadowdark. It's going to be a Shadowdark Star Wars setting. You heard it right here.
I've actually written the book that I was just talking about. I hid it in the download for Cascade Failure for a while, and let me see if I can pull it up here. I forget exactly where I put it. Sometimes I hide things from myself.
We're all married. We know how it works.
Yeah. So I do layout design for work. I do a ton of graphic work, and I just like to play with graphics, right? I can't publish anything with Star Wars graphics for obvious reasons, but I like to play with it. So I wrote this thing I called Classic Star Wars that is basically a traveler hack of Star Wars. And it has, like, I played around with, I don't normally use sidebars, but I put sidebars throughout the whole book with, in this chapter, it's planets, and it has everything: Corellia, Coruscant, Deveron, Duro, you know, all the planets, Jeddah, Kuat, and then you go into character design, and it still has some more. Right? I was just playing with their art, making art, you know, ripped off the interweb. And I basically built kind of a traveler system where you go through a character creation process like Traveler, right? You get starting values for stats. Everything gets modified as you move through the system, and then you eventually come out with a character. You know, academic was one. This is the life paths, like in Traveler, Member, Drifter, Force Adept, Fringer, Medical, Intelligence, Scoundrel, Soldier, and then there was like a mysteries one where you could have crazy shit happen to you.
Man, where were you with this in 1980? I could have used this.
Oh man, I was
Traveler.
negative. I was -1 in 1980. By the way,
It was just a thought
and
an urge.
yeah. So then I like I said, I just went through this and I made it, and I told some people about it, but I can't sell it, right? So I had hid it in the download for Cascade Failure, which was a free PDF that I had for a long time. It was a D20 sci-fi game that I had made in my early years, and if you downloaded it, that was an Easter egg. But I've since disabled that download, so there now, if you want it, you have to come kiss my ass. That is the only way to get it, or find someone else who has it, which I don't know.
Well, Shadowdark and its popularity has put you in that position where you're in a ass kissable position. So let them kiss the ring. Let them kiss the ring or your ass or whatever they have to kiss.
Well, I had somebody come back to me a couple weeks ago for a game that I had written. I wrote like 7 or 8 free games back in the day, 2010, 2012 timeframe.
Google Plus days or something.
Yeah, and somebody came to me and they were like, "Hey, I heard you wrote this game called Statecraft, and I can't find it anywhere." And I was like, "Why? Yes, I did." And it was basically a kind of diplomacy. There's a game called Europa Universalis. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of it. It's a video game. It's also a board game that will take you, I think, 20 hours to play and drain you of some life energy. But it was kind of like you're a European states monarch for a period of time, and you collected territories like as parts of your character sheet, and you had a cool thing. And I was like, yeah, I did. I mean, like looking back at it now, I think it's primitive and broken, but here you go. Here's the PDF. And I hope he has fun with it. I haven't looked at it in a long time. Yeah.
That's very cool. All right. I mean, so I was the one thing I was going to ask you, Greg, like, is there anything that you put out though that it's a double-sided question that did way better than what you thought it was going to do? And then the other side, is there something you put out that you thought it was going to do way better, but it didn't?
I don't know that anything did way better than I thought it would.
You just thought everything was going to go gold.
You know, I have a lot of dreams, but there have been some products that did not do as well as I thought. I was worried Terra Invictus for Shadowdark would be one of them, because like my pattern is that I have not been that successful with my kind of nitty-gritty game content, rather than, like I was saying earlier, like the high level stuff. And so that kind of leads to a little bit of doubt in your mind about whether it's going to be good. But even things like that, like I knew going in it wasn't going to sell as well as a GM companion or something like that, just because of the marketing. But you know, there have been, you know, I was hoping Last Candle would do better than it did. Like I said earlier when we were talking with Mike, there's been a lot of the stuff that I've written for for Adventure Conquer King too, I hoped would do a lot better. But I think the game just requires a level of buy-in from the players that it's difficult to get together, you know, and so then buying a product for that becomes less successful. I wish it wasn't the case. I love Adventure Conquer King. I love the hell out of it. And I wish more people had the willingness to learn how to play it. But it is much more crunchy and requires a lot more player investment.
Oh, yeah. Well, what you should do, if you want to sell some more, Greg, is run us through it on one of our random party generators or something like that we did in the past, and get some ears on it and have Eric pimp it out and get some eyes on it and show them how to do it. Look at it now.
Back from Joe. Sorry, I was distracted by the feeble humor.
Yes. And that refers to what we were talking about before we got online.
Yeah, I was going to say, how much you are you still doing? I've seen a few of them. How many, or do you do live plays of your material? I don't know if I've seen any where you're giving people kind of a preview of the product. I've seen some of your other videos, but I don't know if I've ever seen a live play. Would you ever do one?
I don't know that I would ever do one, because in general, I don't. Let me first say, I really enjoyed the Adventure Conquer King and ongoing. I still enjoy the Grey Brotherhood series that Alexander McCrease has put out. It's like in episode 35 or something now.
I was going to say
it's crazy long, yeah. And it's in like Roman numerals, so I almost don't even know. I almost don't even know how to read it at this point. I'm just like, it's the next one. I don't know what number it is. But the thing is that the kind of things that I'm interested in require a lot of player thought, right? Like, so they run into problems that they're like, how can we resolve these problems? And it's really easy to go, oh, these people are having just analysis paralysis problems. But there is a certain amount of time that I like players to spend really grappling with what the hell they're going to do for this next thing, because if every problem has an obvious solution and then they just jump right into going in that direction, then they're not really leaving their mark on the world of how they would resolve it differently. So just to get, I don't do. Maybe Tim. I think Tim would be on it. Okay, no, David Perzabilla. David P.
Yeah. I know
from back in, he's in my Saturday night group. Okay. And he ran Shadowdark campaign for a while, and kind of the capstone. I didn't know it was the capstone at the time, but the capstone was that we had this guy who was the lord of a sizable town. I mean, 20,000 people, a city, and he had a keep, and he had guards, and he had all sorts of defenses, and we really came to the conclusion we have to kill this guy, right? That's unfortunate.
That sounds like a typical party,
right?
That's the only motivation they needed. This guy's too well guarded. He should die.
He had a plan to wipe out the town that we did care about. And the only way we could stop it was by killing him and replacing him with the kind of guy in the wings who could take over for him was anti-orc, and the guy who was in charge had made a deal with these orcs. So we knew that if the leaders swapped out, that the anti-orc guy would break his alliance with or there would be no more threat to our starting town. But we spend a lot of time plotting how to kill this guy. What if we do this in order to draw the guy outside of the gates, and then we killed him there, but then we'd have to skirmish off into the woods after we did it? What if we use these magic potions that we had? What if we do this? What if we do that? That would have been a horrible live play. Like we're just sitting there going, how the fuck are we going to kill this guy? And just brainstorming for an hour and a half how we're going to kill this guy.
It can't be any worse than shopping.
Yeah, I mean, like it's just not.
Nothing is.
Yeah, I think there's ways of creating live plays, and it actually pains me that I'm going in this direction, but the live plays that D&D shows, these ones that are just horribly overproduced and the people are ostentatious and crazy and all this stuff, I hate them. But But what they do correctly is that they've limited it to a particular series of events that they know will photograph well. And the players aren't going to be spending a ton of time contemplating how to proceed or analyzing 8 different paths to get to the same location. You know, they've got it set up for a series of, I think they believe, comical interactions that are just the most lame shit I could possibly ever watch. But it's that kind of thing. Like they intentionally set it up to follow that path. And to me, the railroading effect of that is I just can't bear it. I can't. I
get that.
I could see setting up something to run for a promotional purpose, but not for like this is how I would actually want to really play the game. Does that make sense?
Well, that's adventure design for consumption. That's where we're doing this for like a TV show, like a 30-minute, sitcom has to hit certain beats or has to hit certain things. Then there's a commercial break, and then there's, whatever that it winds up with whatever. But versus very formulaic versus, Tim's game where, hey, you're just gonna get what you're gonna get. This is it. This is like we're showing the basement game, and they're showing the primetime special game.
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons why I think Alien works really well is that there isn't that space for thinking because there's a ton of pressure to move forward.
Right.
And that pressure is you're fucking about to die. Okay, like it's right behind you. You've got to keep moving. You can't be like, how am I going to kill this alien over a 36-hour period? You've got to deal with it in the next 10 minutes. Like that's a real pressure. That's one way of dealing with it. I would like to see. Unfortunately, I've watched a few Alien live plays, and I'm trying to find a way to not say this arrogantly, but I can't. It's not as good as when I run it. I don't know what to say. I mean,
that worked fine.
The great thing is I've got Tim here, who's been in it, and he knows I keep pressure on, constant action. They were on their heels the whole time.
Well, and there's a stress mechanic, is there not, in the game that controls some of that? That if you're failing that, things are getting worse.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there was
potentially getting worse.
The scene that Rob and Joe bring up, where Joe became convinced. I think I'm telling this right. It might be the roles are reversed. Joe became convinced that Rob was. No, it was Rob. It is reversed. Rob
I was going to say, I think it was
Joe. Joe was the pilot, and Rob was convinced that he was sabotaging them in some way or doing some shit, and it escalated between them as PCs. Like they're fighting
real
as
life
PCs.
Bleeding over into the game.
That was my stress mechanic during the game, was playing with Joe and Rob.
One of them was a secret android, and so what happens is there was a shot fired, and the blood is white, right? And they're like, holy crap. Now, Joe wasn't even expecting the blood to be white. Like, he thought they were all humans. And so he just pulls and just shoots him in the face. Yep. It's hard to get that. It's hard to get that even with Shadowdark. That is a hell of a tension level that is just unbeatable. I love Alien.
That brings up a good question. If you were to put in a stress mechanic in Shadowdark, what would that look like?
I would say that first off, you're just already on the ropes. Rob. Yeah, you're on the ropes. But I would say, like, if you started adding just cumulative -1s, because you already have advantage and disadvantage, and the more you added cumulative -1s, having advantage becomes absolutely essential to succeeding, right? So, like, as the characters get more desperate, they're only doing things where they have advantage. Yeah, they're putting all of their focus on setting up the situation so that they can succeed rather than just hoping for a better dice outcome. Because if you've got a -8 and you really need advantage, like if you don't have advantage, you're fucked. So like the more it kind of ticks up, and there's all kinds of things you could tie to it, having the dark being every round you spend in darkness increases it by 1 every time the torch goes out, and unexpectedly or something, you could increase it by 1. But I'd almost feel bad like I'm kicking someone who's down.
Yeah. We get -4 just for being in the Comor Forest.
Yeah,
it's
that's pretty much it.
But you do also have the advantage in that Tim rolls 1s.
Yeah.
Occasionally.
It's some balances, yeah. But we are also very good at rolling 1s.
I was gonna say, Greg, they definitely kept up with me.
Yeah.
I remember, I can't remember what animal it was that you tried to heal and it explode.
That was Ken
or something.
Yeah, Ken killing the horse.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a horse. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm gonna heal this horse.
It's
the horse explodes.
It's permanent lore now. Yeah.
Yeah. Just kind of. He's like, oh.
Yeah.
I think a horrible transporter experiment, accident or something.
Right.
I think we all have our individual stress mechanic. Like if Joe plays and he's starting to antagonize bears, that's my stress mechanic. Now I'm stressed out and I roll at a -1 because now he's going after bears for no reason. No reason to go after bears, but there he is. Now I'm at a -1. Yeah, so
it's just
if
you could call you roll the Joe mechanic then.
If you did soul, you would know.
I think it'd be good though. I think everybody should just choose a stress mechanic of another character that when they do this makes me uncomfortable and I'm going to roll. It's an automatic -1 for me on whatever I'm rolling because he's stressing me out. That character's stressing me out.
Oh, that'd be dangerous with you guys. You guys don't need any.
Yeah, no, we
create
our own.
I mean, you even with the advantage, you guys are stressed out. You're just like, oh gosh,
that's true.
Because you rolled 2 1s at one time, Paul, when you had
in a row.
Yep.
Oh.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I do think that a lot of the mechanics that are in Shadowdark push that kind of, not in necessarily a stress manifestation, but just a constant level of pressure that you can't, you just from an equipment standpoint, like you're always going, do I have the right tool in order to go down into the, like, should I keep this grappling hook or this crowbar? Which one?
Or my manacles. I'm not sure.
Is going to be more useful to me, or my manacle? Yeah, shit, man, I got to carry manacles. I can't be wasting a slot on non-manacle items.
Throw your gold away. Throw that gold. I don't need that gold.
Well, if he has somebody in manacles, they can carry the gold.
Yeah. Well, in Adventure,
it's like it's a walking backpack.
Every monster has a value as a sold item. I don't know if you know this, but
no, I don't think I knew that.
If you take, if you capture an orc, you can sell his ass in the market when you get back home. So that's a very manacle focused experience for the
green orc. Or
I got a capture
Tolkien orc.
Say that again.
What kind of orc?
I'll pull up. I got an Axe 2 because I played it on Saturday.
I think hit points are a stressor too, because if you have very low hit points, if you only have 3 hit points, if you're first level or second level and you got 3 or 4 hit points, you're a wizard or whatever you are. That's an automatic stress.
I think OSE though is more stressful than Shadowdark, because Shadowdark they still have the kick. I can still revive you if you go down. So where OSE, you just assume room temperature. There's no coming back from it. Yeah. That way.
So the art in Axe 2 is really different from what you see in a lot of other games. He took extra effort. So we've got an orc here. The canine teeth can be ripped. You can sell if they're untrained. You can get 58 gold pieces for an adult, 16 for a juvenile, 12 gold for a baby.
Oh, jeez.
And if you train them, you can sell them for 225 or more. Right? So you just gotta get creative,
What kind
folks.
of work would an orc do?
Don't just leave.
I mean,
what
kind of work
what?
would an orc do? Would they be domestic?
If you can hold an axe, you can hold a
but
hoe,
they work out
buddy.
in the field, or
You
they're
can
gonna wash
plow.
your car, or like serve dinner like a butler. I can't see an orc doing that.
Hey, see, that's where your creativity begins.
I don't know.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's on you.
Yeah. Our
You
hand.
gotta-
How to use my orc slave?
Yeah, our home campaign. We've got an ogre that has discovered he loves to dig, and has now become just a permanent residence in one of our base towns. And he's basically built the moat for the town.
Customer service, Ken says.
Yeah.
He can win customer service.
He likes to dig.
Yeah.
Well,
That's
I mean,
funny.
like the adult juvenile baby thing seems a little dark when it's an orc, but when it's a Pegasus, when it's a
Right.
giant lizard, when it's something that you could see using as a mount or as defense or something like that, becomes, okay. If I get some raptor eggs, I'm carrying that shit out and grow me some raptors.
Yeah, so let's remind everybody, these are fake things. Just so anybody gets it, they are not real things, and they don't reflect anything.
Unless you're playing Lex Arcana, and then you could have, Thracians and Ephesians.
There you go.
So,
Yeah.
whatever else.
I've heard the Thracians
captured.
built a really kick-ass cavern.
That is true.
They
Yeah,
do.
They did.
Yep. I don't have that one yet. I don't.
You don't have caverns of Thracia?
You know what's funny is I did years and years ago, and I have almost everything else, but that's the one out of my Judges Guild collection. I bought it was in the box for $5. It was like in this box of there's tons of stuff. I have no idea where it went to. I think Rob took it. I'm blaming Rob. He stole it.
I have the PDF. I ran it recently.
Oh, did you?
Using Axe 2.
Oh, very cool.
Because I set up a map in the desert, and I gave a bunch of different dungeon options that they found over time, and I just put different modules in different locations.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
I had an abandoned city full of zombies, and I put a pyramid in the middle of it, and that was the Lost City module underneath the pyramid, right? And I had a place where the Caverns of Thracia were, and I had the Deep Dwarven Delve or whatever it is. Might have gotten the words mixed up there a little bit, but I think it's Deep Dwarf Delve. There's a mine that leads down into the mountain and whatever. And then my players had to choose whether they were going to go one place or the other. They liked Thracia. They were really scared of the Dwarven Delve. And that's where they all died, actually.
So
against the Naga, which is brutal. They got ambushed by a Naga, and I think it killed half of them in the first round.
Wow, the first round.
So yeah, because it has like an instant save versus charm, or you're totally charmed, and they're right next to a pit. Them all jump in the pit. Half of them failed their saves. There's a lot of crying.
A lot of crying.
He says with a smile. All right.
One dwarf ran away, and he didn't have any light source, and you don't have dark vision or anything in Axe 2. So he had to crawl his way up this mine, like following the minecart tracks. And he had to just crawl his way through the dark to get out. It was hilarious.
That would be terrifying. All right. Well, I think that's a good place to know. Thanks for joining us, Greg. I appreciate taking the time out and doing this.
No problem.
And hopefully, you got more success coming your way. I'm sure you do. Is it? Let me ask you this: can you tell us your next release? So just on the outside thing, is this going to be a Kickstarter, or is this going to just be a release?
It is going to be a Kickstarter.
Okay, I thought so. Yeah.
You really need to have something of a reputation before you do the Kickstarter, or
Yes.
you'll be the person who's struggling to get to the $2,000 mark or
Right.
something. And I don't want to do that. So I hadn't done that for a while, and since I have a huge stock art reserve and I can do all the layout and design everything myself, I don't need to raise money.
Right.
I can just launch product. I could launch this product as soon as it's ready.
Yeah.
If I wanted.
Absolutely.
The Kickstarter has a couple of network effects. One, it's outside of the drive-through system. It brings in a lot of people who are just looking for keywords that are in your thing, and I'm going to have keywords that are going to bring in a lot more people than conventional D&D stuff, actually, without giving anything away yet. And so I'm going to be able to really tap into that network effect.
Cool.
Second, there's a network effect of Shadowdark in general that able to take that much advantage of 2 years ago that now is I'm really well positioned to do.
Yep.
And then I've also been I had sworn off social media when Google Plus got murdered. And I say murdered because we found out after the fact. I thought it had just been a failed system, but we found out about 5 years after Google Plus was killed that they had done the research and figured out that they weren't able to force you to watch enough stuff you didn't want to watch on Google Plus. So rather than admit that we just can't force enough ads, we can't put enough shit in your feed you don't want to read, we're just going to kill this system, and then the next system we make will know not to make it respond to your needs, but instead respond. And so they murdered it. Google Plus was fantastic for role-playing games.
For a few years it was gold.
And and I had 9,000 people that I was connected to on Google Plus.
9,000.
And and it was very stressful from a psychological standpoint of dealing with that many people. Every time you said anything that was slightly controversial, it became an endless day of dealing with people complaining about whatever it was. And so I said, I'm not going to do this anymore. And so I went through a blackout period for 8-9 years.
Isn't that where you got your honorific from? Your Pope of the USR.
Pope, yeah. And and so when I came back to X, I want to call it Twitter. I don't really like X, but I came back after Elon Musk bought it, and I said, okay, if there's not going to be any of this shenanigans, maybe this is the best way to say whatever I want and not have to deal with the social stress. And I wasn't going to get into any politics discussions on there. I was only going to use it for gaming. You can still destroy your psychological health with just gaming. You know. So I made I'm not going to get into anything except gaming. And I've consistently stayed with that. I just got over 1,000 followers on Twitter, which is a good way of getting the message out.
45 of them are watching right now. 45 are watching you right now.
Yeah, and so I have a lot of people that I'm connected to on Twitter that when I make a big announcement, reshare it to their following group, and it really gets a lot of distribution. So all those things are aligning here right now. So I have the Shadowdark system, I have the Kickstarter ecosystem, I have my own Twitter following circle, and so I'm hoping that when I launch this, that it will be able to get to a much greater degree of success than just launching things on drive-through alone. And I plan on just doing fulfillment through drive-through. I was kind of on the fence about that before, but with the tariffs, I am definitely going to be doing that.
Yeah.
And I don't want to deal with the stress of it. One thing that people who don't make anything don't really understand is that you don't just make the thing. That's not even the hardest part, right? You like making the thing usually. The thing that you don't like is dealing with learning new, obtuse, difficult to understand computer systems
Technology.
drive-through is very user-friendly in a lot of ways, but it is difficult to learn and understand how all of those systems work. And I've had people who've really struggled just to get like the bleed right on the edge of the pages, because
I still haven't figured it out, Greg.
what the hell you're doing. Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know.
It took me a while, and I've ordered a lot of proofs that I fucked up, not them.
Right.
Stuff like that. You have to learn if I took somebody out of the Shadowdark group on Facebook, just some random person, and I was like, all right, I want you to learn how to do ads on Facebook. I want you to learn how to do ads on Twitter. I want you to learn how to do ads on all these different things.
Mike's your man, huh?
Set up different, new accounts.
I'm like, I have an ad agency. We do programmatic. Call me.
I understand. Yeah, that's the kind of thing that you have to develop is networks. And like one of the things I really want to talk to people about at North Texas is I want to show them the proof copy of. It's not going to be 100%. I'm just going to have ordered the proof so that I have it when I'm at North Texas. There's going to be a lot of gaps in it, but to be able to say, this is what I'm doing, tell me what you think I should do from a Kickstarter perspective and so on. I have access to a friend of mine from work who is really good at video development. I'm going to be writing up scripts and design for him to do a promotional video, so that the promotional video on Kickstarter, there's just so many moving parts. So it's, people a lot of times have this, oh, you just got to do the one thing. Like, no, there's so much stressful pain in the ass. Even just the fact that, we, like you talked about earlier, that GM Companion had moved up from Electrum to Gold, and the cover page that I try to highlight that the status on the cover page, because sometimes that's the only thing people see is the little thumbnail. And so I had to go back, and I did it while we've been talking intermittently, and I updated it. But a lot of times you end up at the end of the day, you have a list of like, well, I got to do this, and I got to do this, and I forgot to grow. I get a lot of correspondence from people in PMs, and I like these people. I want to respond to them, but it takes time for me to be like, what am I going to say to this person? And that sometimes I'm like, I'll do that tomorrow, and then I forget. And so it's just things that accumulate and become a drain on you that are not writing books, And you want to help people. People send you a PM and say, hey, how did this thing? How could you? This you want to? Somebody wrote me, but that does become one more thing that in my day to day.
Right. Well, hopefully, yeah. When you get that released, I'm sure you'll let us know and everything, and we'll make sure. Kind of help spread the word. Yes. Oh, I know. I'm sure I'll probably hear about it quite a bit. So, but no, that way we can, do our share to kind of help promote it and make it as successful as it can be. Of course. Of course. You write good stuff, Greg. I mean, you know me. I'm pretty upfront with my opinions, and I don't have a problem if I don't like something. And your books are always right next to me, and I refer to them all the time when I'm writing my adventures. I use them quite a bit. Because like I was going to mention before, I mean, the nice thing about your supplements, Greg, is they fit seamlessly with Shadowdark. So I don't have to do any tweaking or I can just take your stuff, plug it in, done. So it's it's made my adventure writing easier, if that makes sense. So
Yeah, I appreciate the praise. I was just thinking of, I guess that one thing I did get out of grad school is the ability to look up all this, figure out, okay, what I got to come up with this many of this type of thing, and how am I going to approach that? How am I going to systematize that? How am I going to research it? Like all those catalysts.
right.
I had to go
A
through
lot of research.
a lot of research in order to figure out all these things and say, which ones of these things are found in a temperate forest and which one of these things are found in a tropical place. And there's stuff that I didn't even know existed when I started looking into it, like styrax. I'll leave that to the audience to go figure out what styrax is. But like stuff that you don't you might know what frankincense is, right? You might know a couple of things on the list, but it's hard to put together a list of 85 plants, stuff like that.
Right.
So hey, I got something out of grad school.
A list of
I
plans.
learned how to do research, man.
Oh, that's a big thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Any last questions, guys, before we end tonight? Anyone? Bueller? Okay. All right.
Thanks for the time, Greg. Appreciate it very much.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Greg.
No problem.
Yeah, you've been interviewed about 19 times in 4 days, I think. So seems
I
like
saw 18 of those.
Well,
this I know.
It's one of those marketing things that
It is.
you just
got to do it. You got to do it. So
I can.
All right. Yeah.
All right. Now we can
See
turn
you
off
later,
this
Ken.
live
Thanks for
feed and I can
joining us,
show you the
Knots.
secrets of the new project.
Yeah. Shh. Let's go. All right. Good night, everybody.
Yeah.